Welcome to Renegade Thinkers Unite, featuring the sharpest minds in marketing, inspirational case histories, and weekly insights you can apply to your business. Find out why top CMOs rank this podcast among their favorites. Now, here's your host, Chief Marketing Renegade, Drew Nizer.
Hello, Renegade Thinkers. My guest today is the CMO of Acquia, a 12-year-old software as a service company that topped $200 million in revenue in 2018, has reported 57% growth over the last 3 years, attracting $173 million in 8 rounds of venture capital funding. Based in Boston, Massachusetts, Acquia now has over 1,000 employees, including Lynne Capozzi, who is actually on her second tour of duty, the first between 2008 and 2011, and the second, which began in 2017. Now, that alone, I think, would make it for an interesting conversation, but I suspect we'll get into rebranding, managing growth, becoming a data-driven marketer, improving customer experience, and the whole world of content marketing. And we're going to try to do all that in 45 minutes, so good luck to us. Lynne Capozzi, welcome to the show.
Hi, Drew. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Well, and thank you. And for the audience, I always like to be open and transparent. I know that's a value that's important to you. We had just a wonderful rehearsal just like a few seconds ago. So this should be the best rehearsed show in the history of Renegade Thinkers Unite. Okay, so.
No pressure, though.
No pressure on either of us. And no one will know because, I didn't hit the record button on the last practice round. Okay, so now they know. Before we get to your Acquia experience, let's hit the Wayback button and go back to 18 years at IBM. It started as Lotus. And, there was a long time at one company. And, a lot of folks, as 2 years feels really good. And then they go on to somewhere else. What is it about staying there? Was there any value at staying there? And what kept you there?
I know it was a while that I was there. What kept me there is it was the great beginning of my career, and initially in sales and then also in marketing. And I must have had about 10 jobs during that time. So about every 2 years, I would move into a different role within marketing and occasionally within sales. And for me, it just gave me a great background. I got to experience event marketing. I got to experience demand gen. Then I moved up in terms of being in management and director and product marketing. So for me, it was just an overall great experience of just getting being a well-rounded marketer is kind of the way I like to think of it.
Yeah, and it's funny. I think I told you this story earlier, but I'll tell the audience this. I had a friend, a young man who's probably in his late 30s, who's working for a bank, and he's a marketer. He's really interested in marketing, and they 2 years ago moved him into sales. And I said, congratulations. And he said, what do you mean? And I said, well, you're not going to get to be a CMO or a CEO unless you have a broader base of experiences. And of course, he says to me, well, why didn't you tell me that 12 years ago? And I said, well, you were ready. You probably wouldn't have done it. And so I do think having experience in these other divisions definitely helps you, one, just be more empathetic of the challenges. And certainly a marketer who spent time in sales, that's a really important thing. Okay, so you're 18 years at Lotus, and then it becomes IBM. When you look back on that experience, what were sort of the foundational elements that you think have sort of kept you going as a marketer in your career that you learned then?
I think I learned a few things from that whole time. I like to think I learned a lot, but I think a few things stand out for me. One is that I did have a chance to learn all the different areas of marketing, and that's really important that you understand that in the full marketing mix. And the other thing that I learned, and this was after we had been acquired by IBM, was I did learn from my IBM experience that the customer is always right. And I'm a big believer in that. And I learned that early on, and I continue today to emphasize that within my team and within Acquia. And I'm a big believer in that.
It's funny, when I hear that, the brand person in me wants to sort of push back a little bit and say, okay, brands have to stand for something. And yes, they can be informed by what the consumer, whatever feedback of your customers, and that's great. But an example, Ben and Jerry's ice cream. I don't think Ben and Jerry went to their customers and said, "Hey, we care about the rainforest. How about you?" Or, we're big fans of the Grateful Dead, so we're going to call the brand Cherry Garcia. They understood the essence of the brand, bringing fun to a category that was stuffy, and they sort of lived that brand, and they didn't ask. There were other ways they got customers involved. And so when you think about the difference between the customer is always right and branding, where do you draw the line?
I think there's definitely overlap. I think your brand has to have an image. Your brand has to have value. Your brand has to have things that you believe in as a brand. For Acquia, one of the things that we have in our DNA, and that comes out in our brand, it comes out in our employees and our products, is the whole idea about being open. We are an open source software company. And so the concept of being open and freedom actually is big for us. And so that is an area that carries over into our brand and is part of our brand messaging. And it's important to our customers as well, because we support a very, very large Drupal community. Drupal is an open source CMS, which we based our company on. And there are 1.5 million people around the world that use Drupal. And that's a big, huge open source community. And we value that community. And that is, again, that whole idea about being open is part of our DNA. And so you can think of it as the owners or the community, the people that own, the Drupal product. And they're right? So when we talk about customers being right, it's the community. It's the people that are using the product and contributing to the product. But we definitely come back to our brand imaging there all around open.
Right. And it's funny. So it was Tim Yeaton of CMO of Red Hat was on the show a few episodes back, and they had just gone through or were in the process of rebranding. And he actually premiered on the show his new tattoo of the new logo. And so this would be a great time for you to share the new tattoo that you have for the show. Bring it.
I should have worn my Drupal sneakers. I could have done that, but
all right.
Didn't do it today.
So
Didn't
no
match my
tattoo.
outfit.
And I have to confess, when my daughter at one point had decided, I think she was in college, graduating from college, and she wanted to get her first tattoo. And I had said to her all along when she was young, "Don't worry, when you're ready, I'll go with you, and I'll get one too." Because I thought if I get one, that would make it so uncool. And of course, we go, and it was a wonderful experience. And then I said, "Nah, I'm not going to get one." But I do have it picked up, the Be a Renegade saw. So, yes, true confessions. Okay, so you mentioned CMS. For the folks that don't know what that is, I'm thinking of my dad and others. What is CMS?
So CMS means content management system, and it is it's the product the product that you use basically to build websites. And it's, the whole process of being flexible and open to be able to build websites and a complete digital platform experience. And as I say, everyone needs a website. And Drupal is the biggest content management system, the biggest community for building websites.
And so just for others to sort of give a framework, you sort of work your way up in Acquia and Drupal as industrial strength. It's at some point you can break WordPress and some of these smaller ones like a Wix or so forth. They just break, and you need a more robust solution. So that's what we're talking about. So I did read that you had. You know what? Let's step back. We were jumping in there, but I want to go back to your break. You took a break, and I know that a lot of CMOs who've accomplished something. You're at this startup, it's doing really well, it's growing fast. And you just say, "Wait, time out. I'm going to go take a break." Talk about that.
I did take a break. We were doing extremely well in Acquia. We were climbing like crazy. I say it like a rocket ship. And at the time, I decided I wanted to focus on giving back some. So I left Acquia. I'm still an investor in Acquia, so very much involved in watching Acquia. And I went to run a nonprofit through Boston Children's Hospital here in Boston. And I'm on the board at Boston Children's. And that it's still a very big part of my life in terms of contributing to the hospital and helping children on a worldwide basis. So yes, that's what I was doing for a while.
And I mentioned this idea that of you're still doing this other thing in your part time, which that makes you really Gen Z territory because you have a side hustle. So I think that's pretty cool.
Excellent.
Yeah,
I'm happy to put that on my resume too.
exactly. Side hustle,
Exactly.
part time job. But what brought you back?
I was, I think I was ready to come back. I came back and started doing some consulting from Acquia, and literally I fell back in love with the opportunity. And I came back as the CMO. It's not often you get to come back in the same role twice.
Yeah.
So my team calls me a boomerang. It was great for me because I got to come back. In some ways, I felt like I never left at all, and in other ways, it felt totally different because the organization had tripled. It had really grown dramatically. Our customer base had grown. The number of products that we had in the market had grown. The Drupal community had grown, and just people's whole interaction with websites had changed over those couple of years. So in a lot of ways, it was a new environment, but the things that kept me here the first time were really the same: the opportunity in the market, the growth, the great smart people that I got to work with, and the whole idea of working with the open source community, which was it's quite fun. It's enjoyable, and it's very different than other corporate roles.
Yeah, it really is. And it's funny because I've got to know the Magento folks, and they have
Uh-huh.
the same sort of passion in developer community and other open source. And so it really, it's a very special thing when your customers feel ownership of your product, and it changes the way you think about your brand. And so many
Absolutely.
brands would love to have that.
Absolutely.
So it's a real positive strength. So you rejoin. It's really a different company because when you left, it was 2 years old. When you came back, it's 7. It was vastly larger, more sophisticated, all those other things. And at some point in the last 2 years, you recognized the need to rebrand. Just frame for us, what were the signals that told you you needed to change? And again, whatever you decided to change in the rebranding.
I think it was time. I felt like it was time for us for several reasons. We hadn't changed our image and our initial look since we launched the company earlier in 2008, and so it was time. It was time for us to have a bit bolder image. Our brand itself was very humble, and it kind of came back to our open source roots around that. But based on the market, we needed to be a bit bolder. We wanted to increase in terms of our general look and feel, have more crisp messaging, and at that time, be ready to talk about how do we stand versus our competition, and be proud of that,
Right.
And have a new cool look, as my team says.
So, what in terms of the look and feel? What are we really talking about? A new logo, new colors, new palette? What's sort of when we frame what rebranding means?
We kept our original Acquia drop logo, but we modernized it with new color palette, all new color palette, and then basically everything else changed. So we had a new website, we had a new look, we had new messaging, we had new pillars for our messaging, and it was a brighter, bolder, prouder, and as I said a little bit earlier, kind of cooler look.
Cooler. Okay.
As well as new messaging that went along with it that worked not just for a developer type community, but also to marketers. We had new products that were marketing based products, and so we needed to make sure that our look and feel matched to that.
Okay, we're going to take a quick break. Speaking of cool, and we'll be right back.
Did you know that Renegade Thinkers Unite was ranked number 2 of the top 10 podcasts for CMOs by Crackerjack Marketing? Wow, we're really honored. Now, we couldn't do that without amazing guests, and we've had some amazing CMOs on this show, and also terrific listeners like you all. If you like what we do here, please subscribe on your favorite podcast player. That way, you'll never miss an episode. Also, as a special thanks, I'd like to send you a free ebook on Renegade Thinkers. Now, for that, just email drew@renegade.com. Now let's get back to the show.
Okay, we're back, and we've been talking about rebranding, and you change your messaging. Talk about what's the overall brand story, and summarize it in 6 words or less.
So I think our tag summarizes it well, which is experience digital freedom, and
Okay.
that's what we use, and that's our claim to fame. And I think it really works well for us. We haven't talked much about actually what Acquia does.
Oh, well, we could do that.
It might be a good time.
Okay, fine.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so I've talked about Drupal. We are the company that helps people be successful with Drupal. And people use Drupal as a CMS to build their website applications, to build their websites.
Sure.
And we help enterprises, companies of all sizes, and government organizations and nonprofits and universities be successful using Drupal. So we provide products and support and add-on products that work with Drupal, as I said, to help people be successful. So we run some of the largest websites in the world. We run some of the largest single event websites, such as we help NBC Sports with the Olympics and the Super Bowl. Events that you can't mess up, right? You can't, right. You can't have downtime during the Super Bowl. That would not be good.
Nope. If we were going to link in our show notes to a couple of the, what you would say as a showcase websites that are on Drupal, what would those be?
NBC Sports, I think, is a big one. There's all different industries, and with Pfizer and Nestle. Nestle has thousands and thousands of brands, and they have thousands and thousands of websites. And so they use our platform to be able to roll out websites with a consistent look and feel in meeting branding guidelines, but yet can be different per individual brand. So there's a lot of them out there. The latest one, which is kind of fun, which I like to talk about, is actually Wendy's. So, Wendy's, in case you didn't know, Wendy's says 1 out of every 10 Americans will go to Wendy's.com. And so I know, interesting data to know. For nutrition information. Well, for nutritional information, and sometimes people will go for coupons, and sometimes, but a lot of times for nutritional information. And so, Wendy's, they are very well known for their social. So their social is very, very strong, and they've tied together nicely their social and their website. So anyway, just a story one that everyone knows.
Oh, there you go. All right, who knew? So one of the things that is really interesting and important, what we talk a lot when we're talking to smaller companies than yours, but when they're looking at the B2B branding process, is the first audience is employees. And I know that you share that belief. Can you talk a little bit about how you rolled out your rebranding exercise program to your employees, how long it took, that kind of thing?
Sure. So first and foremost, after we went through our own internal within marketing branding exercise of, what is our messaging? What does it look like? What does it sound like? What are we going to roll out? We developed all that. And then first, I brought in a new branding team, and the branding team focused on rolling out first to employees. So our first constituents were definitely our employees. And we literally had the branding team go around from department to department on a branding presentation. And we showed them what it was. We got them engaged. We got them involved. We gave them swag. Exactly. And we got them really engaged in the new brand and got them excited about it. Right. And, we did it once. And then about a month later, we did it again as a review. We did that. And we had some fun with our, we called them the fun branding police. So
there's a contradiction in term. And what made them fun?
Well, instead of a punitive approach, we would do walk around and give people swag so they could replace their old brand with the new brand, and we give them a prize, whether that be some type of swag or so forth. And so it became quite fun. Good. And it was a nice way to definitely engage employees first, because we knew that was our first step in the rebranding, was getting employees on board.
And why, in your mind, is that so important?
Because I think you want everyone in the company behind your brand, and you want them to have a good feel for the brand, and you want them to be engaged in the brand and really like the brand itself. And then therefore you have an entire company where all your employees are focused in the same way around that brand. And consistent, everyone knows as marketers, consistency is important. And so having everyone focused around the same consistency for the brand is really good. And it actually was really good for morale as well.
Sure. And that's one of the things that is so great about a rebranding. If you do it right, employees really feel part of the process. They're proud of the company, and people want to be proud of the company that they work for. And if you just treat them with enough respect and get them involved, and then say, here it is, this is us, and the fact that when they do believe in it, and the opposite of this, by the way, is you rush the campaign out to market and then you forget to tell employees about it. And God forbid you have a new promise and a new website that goes with it, and the call center or the folks don't know what's going on, or you're not operationally set. That's the opposite of this. But you took 6 months to make sure that everybody was on board and that the company could move forward. And I'm going to add one more thing to this notion of employees first is, if employees don't believe in the new brand, full stop, because they won't be able to persuade the customers. And if your customers don't believe in the new brand, then second, full stop, because you're not going to get new customers from it. Because if your customers talk about you differently, just like if your employees talk about you differently, there's a problem in that disconnect. And I'm going to emphasize this in an enterprise sale where people are looking to turn just for reasons to get you off the list. If inconsistency happens and they hear different things from different customers, they're going to, I don't know.
Right, exactly.
So, okay, I'm off my, so what were, then you roll this thing out and tell us a little bit of, what do you think was the coolest thing that you did to make this, this new brand come to life?
Oh, I think it was a combination of, look and feel, everything together, really kind of rolling it out into the market, communicating it to our customers, so that they got a chance to kind of see it and fall in love with it and be engaged with it. I think the other cool thing that we did is we did, as which is kind of interesting, is we're the digital experience company, right? We're all about websites, but we actually took an approach where when we were rolling out the brand, we did some out of home advertising. Mm-hmm. And so we did some digital billboards in regions around the country. And we had train station takeovers, all about Acquia. And so, locally, if you came into the local Cambridge, Massachusetts train station, you saw Acquia everywhere. If you picked up your phone and you went to look, go on Google, you were getting an Acquia ad. You were surrounded by Acquia in the high-tech area, right, within Massachusetts. We did a similar thing in San Francisco. And so it was fun, and it was interesting because we were trying to rise above the noise a little bit, right? And of course we did digital as well. We did a lot of digital advertising, but we did it, and I'm happy that we did it. It gave us a nice boost, and we were able to see an increase in awareness around the brand.
Cool. Okay, let's talk about that. When you started on this program, I think in our earlier conversation, you mentioned that you did a benchmark tracking study. Talk a little bit about why that was so important as part of this rebranding exercise.
I really wanted to know what our starting point was. That's why we did it. And so as we were kind of first starting the rebranding, we did I did a brand tracking study to get our initial measurement point to see where we were at. And I needed a starting point because it's the only way I'm going to be able to measure. And I'm a big believer in, if you can't measure it, don't do it. So that was important that we started that way in terms of where we were for our initial brand assessment. And then it's been just about 2 years. So every year from that point on, we do a brand assessment as well to see how we're doing and to see if we're increasing that awareness.
And are you?
We are, of course.
But I'm going to pause there for a second. And just one of the things that is interesting, I think I told you earlier that we did a study among the B2B CMOs, and they all talked about the importance of brand health and this thing, but very few, less than 20% actually had brand health tracking studies in place. And I feel like as a CMO, this is a very dangerous position to be in, because there are so many other factors that can impact marketing, whether it's a new company coming in, a recession, some other factor. And without that sort of brand health as a sort of underlying structural understanding of your business, you're more vulnerable than you should be as a company,
Right.
as a marketer.
Yeah, exactly. And I think there are different ways that you measure how you're doing on brand and brand awareness. I think, the formal brand awareness study is one. The other is, there's other proxies for how your brand is doing.
Mm-hmm.
Did we increase our website traffic? Did we get more exposure to prospects and customers? Did we get more exposure to industry analysts? Are we getting more engagement from our partners? I think those are all different ways that I use it as proxies for measuring our brand as well. And obviously PR.
Right.
Same thing.
Okay, I'm gonna break that down for a second. But going back to the brand health tracking, where the main metric for you on that was awareness. Was there
Correct.
any other sort of anything else that mattered in the market in that particular measure in that study?
It was really twofold. It was one about awareness for Acquia, and the second was awareness and around Drupal itself, right? So Drupal, the content management, open source content management system. And so they're two different brands, and I was able to measure both at the same time. And because I needed, what was important to me is not only awareness, but also what's the correlation between the two brands and what happens with both of those brands.
Right. No, and it's interesting. There's such a coexistence and codependence between those two. All right, we're going to take a break. And when we come back, we're going to talk about metrics. We're going to talk about cool other things. So stay with us.
You've been listening to another great interview on Renegade Thinkers Unite with Drew Neiser. But the value doesn't end there. As a listener, you can download a free ebook from Drew, Renegade Thinkers, interviews with 11 trailblazing CMOs any business can learn from. Top marketing thought leaders and proven executives from Time Warner, American Express, and Chico's, and others. Get your free copy at renegadethinkersunite.com/ebook. For listeners only, at renegadethinkersunite.com/ebook.
Okay, we're back. And you just said a statement that I have to say makes me, it's a tricky one. Don't do it if you can't measure it. And marketing is incredibly complex, particularly when it comes to attribution modeling and what really mattered in the things that you do, and trying to figure out what really matters. You mentioned that you did outdoor. You did a train station takeover. Those things are hard to measure in terms of their impact. You kind of get some anecdotal, but how did you measure that?
It is measurable though, Drew, because now, some of it is soft touch, right? Soft measurement.
Right.
But the other stuff, especially on my out of home, I was able to, measure by traffic that I drove to my site. And I could tell because of the way we have our products and I use our products, I drink our own champagne, I can tell by geography. So did my traffic increase to the site on that time period from that geography where I ran those outdoor ads? And so I did see that spike. And so that was it was a nice, easy measurement for me.
Right? Yes, it's true. And that was probably a bad example. How do you measure PR?
Yeah, it's a little bit softer measure, but I do have a metric in terms of, all around quantity of, number of placements that we have, and kind of that's how I measure. And then I try to track that to my site traffic as well. Our website is our biggest source of our leads. And so all the activity that we do, most of the activity that we do, we're trying to generate. Our call to action is always to bring people into our site. Because I know if I can bring them to our site, I have a better chance of moving them through my funnel.
Okay. Yeah. How do we measure a good presentation to an analyst?
Eventually, it's where you end up on the chart.
Right. And then we end up on the chart.
Yeah.
And we go, okay, great.
And then you aim for higher on the chart. Then you aim for the higher right on the chart. And
and then how do you measure that in terms of impact? Because that shows up.
Yeah, it shows, right. So it shows up in ways that are probably a little bit more difficult to measure. So it shows up by the number of customers, right, that are at the end. It's how many customers are getting really good reports from the analyst, and then therefore, are choosing an Acquia solution.
Right.
And that was one of the factors that was in that. So yeah, some of it's a little bit more soft measure, but usually we can attribute, as much as we can to traffic flow or to sales leads or to moving a sales process along.
Are you measuring sort of employee engagement in some way in this process?
Employee, from our customers, you mean, or internal?
No, internal, because you did all the effort. You spent 6 months to sort of, how did you measure the impact of, we'll call it the employer brand, the employee brand, in terms of this new rebranding?
Yeah, a couple of different ways we measure it. One is we happen to have our talent team, our HR organization has every quarter we do an employee attitude study. And so we included a couple of questions about the brand in that employee attitude survey. And we have, I know it's unbelievable, we have like an 88% answer rate on the attitude survey.
Wow, that's really good.
I know, it's amazing.
Is that incented at all?
Nope, we just do it as a way to gather feedback, and we have kind of, questions that we have where they can answer, and then open questions that they can write in. So I was able to slip in a few questions about the brand, so that gave me some good data. And also, you can see between, watching people, are they using it on social, right? Are they, and we're a big social organization. And so, are they using the right branding and our current branding in social? And are we, when we're seeing presentations throughout, are we seeing the right templates and the right brand, right? And so those are kind of good ways to measure as well.
How do you measure social in terms of, because it's not necessarily great at driving site traffic.
Social for us is very big around, just awareness in general, and having, and also being able to influence social. I mean, social even will influence now the people that are evaluating and looking at our products. So prospects.
I know that it will influence it, but how do you measure it?
Well, we measure it by growth. We measure it by how much, what's our social influence? Is it growing? Are we seeing? Yeah. And so are we seeing, we're seeing more of that over time? Are we seeing it go this way? Are we seeing, more posts and more followers, and definitely that. And we can see the spikes. So I look for spikes in social, and I track what makes our spikes. And, and then I try to repeat those, of course.
Okay. So we're measuring a lot of things.
We are.
We need to, in Drew land, we need to simplify that. So I'm going to give you 3 metrics for your one for employees, one for, you decide. You get, help me get it down to 3 metrics that matter.
That's a tough choice. Only 3.
I know.
How can I live with only 3?
Well, because it's really hard. I think, I think one of the challenges that CMOs have, they have so much data, and they often present too much data, and none of it translates into language that the CFO or the CEO understands.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
So let's narrow it down.
I would say, so there's 2 different ones. In the category of employee engagement around the brand, I think I have the one big metric, which is my employee attitude survey. So I have that for sure. And separate from that, on my marketing and sales type metrics, I'd say there's probably 3 metrics, and I would align those with what my marketing funnel looks like. I think first is a metric up the top of the funnel, which for me would be, leads coming into the top of the funnel. And so a metric around that, traffic. Top of funnel leads.
Funny. And that's really a proxy for reach in some ways. It's a reflection of your reach. And that's a great top single metric, reach. Okay.
Yep. So right up the top.
Okay.
I'd say the second metric would be, and probably the way to think about it for me is I do 3 metrics that tie to the funnel. The top of the funnel at the top, a metric in the middle of the funnel, is all about, engagement and people that are in a consideration mode. So I'd say a metric right in the middle of the funnel.
Like sales qualified leads, like
yes.
Demos watched. I mean, let's pick, if you had to pick one, most important one.
Sales qualified lead.
Okay. SQLs.
SQL or sometimes they're SALs, but I'd say SQL. Yep.
Okay. And then the third?
I think the third is bottom of the funnel and how we do around a metric around close. So
Close rate.
yeah, close rate in in
Okay.
obtaining customers.
And I can hear the CMO saying, and they're out there and they're going, that's a great metric. I love sales, but it's a 14-month sales cycle. There are 10 people in it. It's a complicated decision. I got them to the sales guy. I got them all set up. I told them who the key person was. They got them in the room. What do you want from me? How do you make sure that they close?
So I feel very aligned with sales in the work that we do in marketing, and even myself as a CMO to the head of sales, the CRO here at Acquia, Pyro. And I think it's very much connected. And so how we influence what happens at the bottom of the funnel and closing has a lot to do with what we're providing for them. How is marketing doing for sales enablement? Are we enabling our sales and are we enabling our sellers to be educated about the product, to know the products, to know what our messaging is, to know how to sell those products? And so for me, marketing provides the enablement materials to make sure that enablement happens so that our sellers are closing. And so it's not just to throw these leads over the wall and walk away. It definitely has to be a stay engaged, know what material they need, know what other material they need at that bottom of the funnel, which is different from information you need at the top of the funnel. So it's not removed at all. It's very much connected together.
Yes, my friend Brad Adamson of Gartner would be smiling right now. Of course, he'd be all about buyer enablement because buying is broken according to their research. And if the marketer is helping the sales folks and the customer, make it easy for them to buy. Okay. Now, one of the challenges that we hear a lot about are personas. I've been on a rant lately about that because I see them as cliches and being misused, because what happens is you see these folks who have a message that goes to the CFO, a message that goes to the CISO, one for the CEO, you will be the master of the universe, one that goes over here, and suddenly there's 10 different visions of the brand. This team gets together. They don't know who you are and what you stand for. Even though the CFO likes your ROI and the CISO likes your security and the IT guy likes your integration things, they can't come to a common understanding of the brand. How do you make sure that doesn't happen?
So the way we do it is to make sure that, and I agree, it's very important that all of those personas, and for us, it's easily IT. There's typically a business person, a marketing person, to make sure that every message that we give to every member of that committee or that group has a brand message that goes along with it. So one example for us is, as I said earlier, we're all about being open. And so what we do is relate to our brand to that particular persona or individual and what the benefit of open means to them, whether they're an IT or whether they're a marketer. And allows them, open means, they don't have to fight the data that's with all these silos. They can easily integrate it together. If you're in IT, it means open, but it also means security. And so if you're in IT, you get a nice open, secure message around that as well. So we have to tie back to the brand because I have to know what the brand stands for, and it has to be a big part of it. You don't have to hit them over the head with it,
right?
But I think you need to make it visible.
I think you just said an oxymoron, open security.
Open and secure, it's both, right? So for us, it's both.
Right, yeah. Yes, no, I get it. I'm just thinking, yeah, come on in, take our data. It won't be a problem. Okay, so as we wrap up this episode, this has been a really interesting conversation. We've talked a lot about brand, getting employees aligned. We talked about getting your story straight, building, getting to a buyer enablement. You've talked about, thinking outside the box a little bit. It's not all digital. You did some train takeovers and other things that are kind of cool to brought the brand to life.
Yep.
What do you think if you we got a bunch of CMOs here, 2 do's and a don't?
2 do's and a don't. I'd say the first do is to try it. Try it and pull it if it doesn't work. So that was a big for me in terms of all of the outdoor advertising that we did, because we hadn't done it before. Mm-hmm. And it was out of our comfort zone a little bit because it wasn't digital. But we decided to try it, and we tied it really well together in an integrated campaign. And it wasn't just about the out of home, it was about nice consistency that we had throughout all of our channels, our site, social, and so forth. So I'd say try is like a big thing, because You just don't know sometimes. And I think giving your team the ability to try and the permission to try, I think is really important. So let's see, what would be another do? Another do would be that I think it's really look at your MarTech stack, right? I think that's a do. I think a do is pay attention to it. So as CMOs, we have to be really attentive to what's happening in our MarTech stack, right? All of our marketing operations teams are getting bigger. Most of us are spending more money on MarTech. And so you can't ignore it anymore. It's not, relegated to the corner with a couple of analysts that you may or may not have. So I think it's really important that you're paying attention. Are you getting the benefit from your MarTech stack? And, are you making sure that you're making the right investments for the problems that you're trying to solve and really get great ROI? And if you're not, get rid of it, because it's time. Like when I bring something in my stack, typically I will take something else out that's not working as well. So it's kind of like I rotate it through the stack, and I have my team, we literally go through, can we measure ROI? If we can't, why can't we? And if we're not, we probably should get rid of it because we're probably not using it effectively.
Yeah,
So.
let me stop you on that one because it's so interesting. And the Forrester study that came out recently about how companies were spending as much as 1/3 of their marketing budget on marketing technology, and that just made me really go nuts because when I started in packaged goods, it was like you had to keep non-working media under 10% of your total costs. So, what it means is we talked to the vet earlier about top of the funnel. Well, how do you build top of the funnel? It's about reach. Just read Byron Sharp. You got to have reach. You got to have impressions out there. You can't buy reach with marketing technology. It doesn't happen. You have to have reach. So one of the other part of this thing that is sort of drives me crazy, and I've seen this happen over and over again, is they get the marketing technology, but they don't staff up for it. And so as a result, or they get the marketing technology and if they don't step up for it, they don't get to use all the things about it. If they do add the thing, suddenly it costs a lot more. And they don't necessarily look at that real cost and the weighted cost of a new piece of software. So next thing you know, they have this 28 different stacks. They're spending well over $1 million a year, and they don't even have $1 million for working media. You go, wait, this is wrong. Yet the drive to have metrics and measurement and be able to prove it has really driven this. And this is where sort of this don't do it if you can't measure it thing drives me crazy, because marketing technology is built by design to answer the question, where do I spend my money and how do I spend it better? So anyway, there's a rant there. So what's the right balance right now in your mind about how much from a percentage of budget should marketing technology take?
I don't know. What I see mostly, and what I see most CMOs comfortable with, is somewhere between 10 and 15%. And so I think that's more realistic, percentage. Probably a little bit higher than what it was, 5-6 years ago.
Yeah, well,
but I think that's a realistic number. It's one that I'm comfortable on my own team. And it's one that I think that general area is what I see most, right, most of our customers looking at.
10 to 15. Love that. That's
exactly.
A great place to go. And I know that your business from your standpoint, if you're going to spend that 10%, you better spend it on a good CMS.
Exactly.
There you go.
Yeah.
Now, I want to go back to your first point about trying things. I love that. That's what this show, Renegade Thinkers, is all about. But what's important here is you need a foundation of trust in the organization before you can try things. And that's why, again, like a brand health study helps you get that. Having metrics that matter help you get it, and then you can experiment. But you need this solid brand to then go out and experiment. It's not experimenting with brand.
Yeah.
It's experimenting with a tactic to bring the brand to life. So
exactly.
Great, really good point. You in the intervening moments between me talking, did you think of a don't?
I think the don't. Actually, I say this to CMOs all the time when I'm out speaking a lot. Is I think the don't is don't miss the boat on personalization, because it's hot right now, and it's the brands that are not personalizing are the ones that are going to fall behind. And we know there's a direct correlation between brands that can personalize and relate to their consumer. I don't care whether it's B2B or B2C. The more you can personalize and have a direct correlation and a relationship, with your customer, the better off you are for customer advocacy, for, for brand, for people, loving brands and being consistent with brands. And so that's what I'd say is don't miss the personalization boat, because right now it's really important.
And I want to distinguish, because I do rant on personas. There's a big difference between personas, which are cliche, job-driven definitions, and personalization, which is data-driven. Hey, I know Drew is a history buff, so when I go to Amazon, that's what I see. That's the level of personalization, or book recommendations, or whatever it is. Now, to get to that, you need a lot of first-party data. Or you need a lot of money to buy that data.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yep.
I think what's hard for your $25 million company or $50 million company to build the infrastructure to personalize. So what do you mean as we talk about personalization and we wrap up at the show? I mean, we're not Amazon. That's right. Amazon can do it on an infinite level. They have by buying behavior, they have by credit card behavior, they have all of that.
Yep.
A smaller market or a mid-sized market, or what should be a reasonable expectation for personalization?
I always tell people to start small, right? And so start by collecting your profile data. And I think, maybe you have to look at what's the most important to you and what do you want to personalize. Maybe it's most important that you're looking at personalization is just around geography, right? And making sure that, that you're tracking that and you know that about geography. Or maybe it's, personalization is all about what particular industry someone's in. Or maybe it's most important that you think about knowing what size organization, so I think it depends what people want to accomplish, but it's okay to start small, right? Don't get overwhelmed by it, because that's how we all start. And we start small and think about what your most important thing is first, and then grow that, because that's what we all do. We all grow. And, if you don't have anyone that knows about personalization, get someone trained, take someone from your staff now and have a percent of their time go out, investigate personalization. There's a lot going on right now. There's a lot that everybody can learn. I think having, someone, you don't have to have 100%, you don't have to go hire a new person, but typically I see in marketing teams that there's someone in the team that's really interested in learning about personalization. So figure out who that is and make them the expert.
Right. Yeah, it's funny. In several conversations I've had this week on any possible topic, and one of the things that comes down to it is, if it's important enough to your strategic plan, that you better have a person assigned to it and his job is responsible for it. Because if you don't, it won't happen. And it's it doesn't matter whether we're talking about personalization or customer experience or any of these things, or just even data and metrics. If there isn't a person on your org chart, ideally reporting to you, the CMO, then chances are it's really not going to be taken that seriously. Somebody's got to own it. Well, speaking of owning it, you've been awesome. You're a terrific sport for having such a great rehearsal with me, which I appreciate, and great insights. I'm going to round some of those things out as I want to do. It's just there was a lot of good content in here related to building a brand and being thoughtful about it, and taking the best of where you were, not losing sight of your core elements. But, if you need to refresh after 6 years because you're a dramatically different company, then do that, and do it in a thoughtful way, which means go to your employees first, spend time with them, get them bought in, then get to your customers, and then get to your, and then share it. I am not quite sure I agree with if you can't measure it, don't do it. But I know that every CEO and CFO in America agrees with it. So Lynn has the majority on her side with that recommendation. And I'm sure it would be hard to fail without that one. So with that, Lynn, thank you so much for being on Renegade Thinkers Unite.
Oh, thank you, Drew. It was fun. It was very fun. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. And to all you listeners, thanks for hanging in with us. I hope you got a lot out of the show. If you have some questions that you want to send to me or Lynn, please email them to me. It's drew@renegade.com. Let's see what else. Oh yeah, don't forget to go to your favorite site and review our show. We are a 5-star show and we want more 5 stars. So thank you. And until next week, keep those Renegade thinking caps on and strong.
This has been Renegade Thinkers Unite, but it doesn't end there. Just go to renegadethinkersunite.com for more and subscribe to the show. That way, you'll never miss an episode. We'll talk with you next time on Renegade Thinkers Unite.